Subscribe now if you're brave enough to keep watching. The wind howled through the streets of Redfield, a small, secluded town where nothing ever seemed out of the ordinary. But on one cold autumn night, everything changed. Jenna Lewis had been the town's high school librarian for over a decade, known for her quiet, kind demeanor. She loved the stories that filled the dusty shelves of the library, but there was one story that everyone knew and no one spoke of: legend of the Hollowbrook House. It was a crumbling mansion at the edge of town, veiled in secrecy. No one had lived there for years. In fact, most people believed it was abandoned. But every Halloween, Jenna would disappear for a few days, as if drawn to the dark house by some unseen force. No one ever questioned her until this year. When she didn't return after the first night, people began to worry. The town had grown used to her yearly disappearances, but this time felt different. By the third day, whispers filled the air. A group of local teens, feeling brave, decided to investigate the Hollowbrook House. They had heard rumors that Jenna had found something there, something that haunted her. The teens snuck into the mansion in the dead of night, armed only with their cell phones. As they explored the dark hallways, the walls seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. They found Jenna's coat in the foyer, but no sign of her. A sense of dread washed over them. The house felt alive, as if it was holding on to something it didn't want them to find. Suddenly, one of the teens, Sarah, spotted something on the ground: a journal, half buried under the dust. Flipping it open, she gasped. The journal's last entry was dated the night Jenna went missing. "They know. They're watching me. It's too late now. I can't escape the shadows." Terrified, the group ran back to town, leaving the journal behind. When the authorities arrived, they searched the mansion from top to bottom. Nothing. No signs of Jenna. But they did find something else. A video, left playing on an old VHS tape, sat untouched on the mansion's ancient television. And when they finally replayed the footage, there was someone else standing behind her, someone no one saw that night. The town would never be the same again. The Hollowbrook House was no longer just a relic of the past. It had become a dark mirror, reflecting something far more sinister than anyone could imagine. But who was the figure standing behind her? That's the question no one could answer. And it was the one that would haunt them forever. Subscribe now if you're still brave enough to uncover the truth. The town of Redfield was no longer the quiet place it had been. Fear had spread through its streets like a shadow, lingering in every corner, every creaking door. Jenna had been gone for weeks, and yet no one could forget the image burned into the police's memory. The figure behind her, standing motionless in the dark. Detective Mark Harris had taken the case into his hands, but the more he dug, the deeper the mystery became. The Hollowbrook House was the key. It wasn't just a run-down mansion, it was a prison of secrets, a place where time seemed to bend in strange, unsettling ways. The walls whispered, and the air hung thick with the weight of things unsaid. Despite all the searching, no one had come forward with any information about Jenna's disappearance. That was until the local historian, George Miller, approached Mark one evening, looking pale and rattled. "You need to hear this," George said, his voice shaking as he passed a weathered old notebook to the detective. The notebook was filled with stories, old stories that spoke of a cursed past. In the early 1900s, the Hollowbrook family was said to have dabbled in dark rituals, trying to summon something from the other side. It was said that the mansion's foundation had been built over a forgotten cemetery, and beneath its floors, something had awoken long ago. George believed that the house itself was alive, haunted by the souls of the dead. Mark couldn't dismiss the history, though it seemed like a far-fetched superstition. The more he studied the journal, however, the more it became clear that the haunting was not just an old town legend. It was real. And it had claimed Jenna. The last few pages of George's notebook detailed a horrifying pattern: the people who ventured into Hollowbrook didn't leave, at least not in the way they had entered. As the nights grew darker, strange things began to happen to the people close to the investigation. Mark started seeing figures standing at the edge of his vision, silent, motionless, watching. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following him, that he was never truly alone. One night, after hours of research, Mark decided to return to the Hollowbrook House. He had to know the truth. Armed with a flashlight and his unease, he stepped inside the mansion. The air was thick, cold, and damp, carrying an oppressive weight. As he explored, the floorboards groaned underfoot, and the silence was deafening. Then, in the attic, he found something that made his heart freeze. A large, antique mirror covered in dust. It wasn't there in the footage. It wasn't in the previous searches. And it was unmistakable. The reflection in the mirror was not his own. A woman's face stared back at him, her eyes wide with terror. And behind her, a dark figure loomed, just like in the video. It was watching him, waiting. Before he could react, the mirror shattered, and Mark was thrown back against the wall. When he regained his senses, the attic was empty, but the air felt suffocating. Something had changed. The truth was getting closer, but now, so was whatever had been hiding in the shadows. The house was not only holding on to its past, it was pulling them into it. And as Mark fled, one thought lingered in his mind. Jenna wasn't the only one the house had claimed. It was just waiting for its next victim. Subscribe now if you dare to face the truth. The sun had barely risen over Redfield, casting a cold, grey light over the town. Mark couldn't sleep. He couldn't shake the feeling that the Hollowbrook house was drawing him in closer than ever before. Every night, the dreams became more vivid. Jenna's face appeared, her eyes wide with terror, pleading for him to understand. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't hear her words. The town had grown eerily silent after Mark's last visit to the house. No one talked about the mansion anymore, as if speaking its name would bring it to life. But Mark couldn't escape it. He had to know what had happened to Jenna, and he had to face the truth, whatever it was. The first thing he did that morning was return to the Hollowbrook house. It was a bitter cold, and the wind felt sharp as he approached the rotting mansion. The place seemed even more oppressive now, as if it was alive, breathing in time with his steps. He crossed the threshold once more, the floor creaking beneath his boots. His heart raced, and yet he pressed forward. He made his way back to the attic, where he had seen the reflection in the mirror. This time, there was no hesitation. The house had taken too much, and Mark was determined to take back what had been stolen. The mirror, or what was left of it, lay in pieces on the floor, but the air was still heavy with its presence. He felt it. Something was there, just behind him, watching. Mark stepped closer to the wall, his hand trembling as he reached out to touch the jagged remnants of glass. And then, in the silence, the truth came crashing in. The shards of glass began to shift and move on their own, forming shapes. Visions of Jenna, standing in the attic, her face twisted in terror. The figure behind her was clearer now, as if it were becoming solid. Mark gasped. He couldn't look away. The figure was not a ghost. It was a man, pale, gaunt, with hollow eyes. And he was smiling. The image flickered, and suddenly, Mark wasn't in the attic anymore. He was back in the library, standing next to Jenna, who was smiling softly at him. But something was wrong. The air was thick with an unnatural heaviness. Mark reached out to touch her shoulder, but his hand passed straight through her. She wasn't real. Jenna's voice echoed in his mind. Don't trust it, don't trust the house. It's not what it seems. The reflection in the shattered mirror warped again, and Mark found himself back in the mansion, his breath quickening. He had no time to think. The figure behind him was closing in, the smile widening into something grotesque. Mark stumbled back, panic rising in his chest. The shadows in the corner of the room grew longer, darker. With no other choice, Mark turned and ran, his footsteps echoing in the empty house. But the door wouldn't open. He pulled harder, but the handle wouldn't budge. It was as if the house itself had locked him in. Then, just as he felt the pressure building, everything stopped. A voice, soft and chilling, whispered in his ear, "You should have never come back." Mark turned around. The figure, still smiling, stood before him, its face now fully revealed. But it wasn't just the gaunt man, it was Jenna, too. Her face was twisted, her eyes blackened. She wasn't pleading anymore. She was smiling, too. And then it hit him. The house hadn't taken Jenna. The house was Jenna. The walls of the mansion closed in on him, the darkness overwhelming every sense. His pulse pounded in his ears, the last breath of reality slipping away as the shadows swallowed him whole. The Hollowbrook house wasn't just a place of haunting, it was a prison. And now, Mark was part of it. The house had gotten what it wanted. And as the door to the attic slammed shut, trapping him inside, the house fell silent once more.